Imagine you wake up tomorrow morning, you pick up your phone, open your bank account, and suddenly you see 1 crore. You think it's a mistake. You check again, it's real. Then you call your friend. He also has 1 crore. Your parents have also got 1 crore. Your neighbor has also got 1 crore. And then you discover something unbelievable. Every Indian citizen has received rupees 1 crore. Now, what would you do? Would you buy a house, a car, gold, stocks? Would you quit your job? Would you start a business for a moment? This sounds like India has solved poverty forever, but there's a very big problem here and very big questions which needs to be answered. So, has India actually become richer? Because there is a huge difference between having more money and having more wealth. So, and that's what we are going to understand in this video. So let's understand the entire concept with one very simple example. Imagine a village with 100 people. The village has 100 houses, 100 bags of rice and 10 cars. Now imagine everyone suddenly receives rupees 1 crore. Did the village suddenly get more houses? Answer is no. More rice? No. More cars? No. More doctors? No. Ultimately, the resources are still the same, but you have got more money. The money supply has just increased. So the village simply has more money, but everyone now wants to buy more things, and this is where the economics start. So if money increases dramatically, but goods and services don't increase equally, then prices can rise. This is the basic idea behind inflation. So remember this throughout the video. More money does not automatically mean more wealth. So there is a difference between wealth and money. So real wealth comes from the things that money can actually buy. Now let's see what happens when everyone starts spending their rupees 1 crore. The first big negative is there might be a spike in the inflation. So this is a very big statement. So the first major impact would probably be inflation. Let's use just two examples. Imagine a house currently costing 1 crore and suddenly almost everyone can afford it. Millions of people start looking for houses, but India cannot build millions of houses overnight. So the demand is spiking, but supply cannot increase immediately. What happens then? The house prices will spike, and the same 1 crore house might much be more expensive now. So this is what the case. So now if you take food, so in case of food, suppose a family normally spends 10,000 a month on food, and after receiving 1 crore, they may decide, let's eat better, more fruits, more dairy, more restaurants foods, more proteins. Millions of families do the same thing, but farmers and food companies can't instantly double the production, so food prices can rise, and this creates a strange situation. You received 1 crore, but everything you want to buy is becoming more expensive, so your bank balance has increased, but your purchasing power may not increase because by the same amount. That's the major negative impact in the country. So this is what I wanted you all guys to understand. The next part now begins is the second negative part is the people may stop working. So the second negative part is that people may stop working. So now let's think about something very human. If you suddenly receive 1 crore, and would you continue working? Maybe yes, but many people may say, I don't need this job anymore. And imagine millions of people making the same decision. Some may stop doing low paying jobs, hard physical jobs, night shift, jobs far from home. Now businesses have a problem. So they will still need drivers, construction workers, restaurant staffs, factory workers, delivery workers, technicians. But fewer people are willing to work for the old salaries. So companies have to increase the wages. A worker who is working for 20,000, he may demand 40,000 or 50,000 per month. So that's great for the worker, but it increases the company's cost. And what does the company do? It might increase the prices of their products, and that will ultimately impact in the economy by resulting in higher prices of the products available in the market. So we get another chain here. So workers demand high wages and the businesses cost increases, then ultimately the prices of the products produced have to increase, and this is another potential source of inflation. But there's actually a positive side to this. Higher wages could force companies to invest in automation, AI and technology, and that could make India more productive. Now the big positive comes in. So what is the big positives available here? So the first thing is the poverty and the financial freedom. So now let's look at the positive side here. So giving every Indian 1 crore could have enormous social benefits. Imagine a family struggling with debt. Suddenly they can repay it. A student who cannot afford higher education now can afford the college. A family postponing medical treatments now has money for the healthcare. Someone living in a poor house can improve their living conditions. And perhaps more importantly, people would have financial security. They wouldn't necessarily have to live from one salary to the next. They could save, invest, study, start businesses, or take time to learn skills. So, this experiment isn't entirely negative. It could dramatically reduce financial hardships. But there is one problem. How much would that 1 crore actually be worth after prices rise? If everything becomes much more expensive, the real benefit becomes smaller. And that leads to an important question: what happens to all this money? So, where will the people put this 1 crore rupees? So, nobody is going to keep the entire 1 crore as cash. So people will start looking for places to put their money. Some will buy houses, some will buy lands, some will buy gold, some will invest in the market stocks, some will keep in the banks, some will start new businesses. And now here's the problem. If millions of people suddenly buy the same assets, prices can rise very quickly. For example, if everyone wants land, so land prices can explode. If everyone buys stocks, stock markets will outperform and the prices will rise. If everyone buys gold, gold prices will also rise, and this creates another risk. There are asset bubbles. So prices can rise because people have excess money and expect prices to keep rising. But a rising price doesn't necessarily mean the underlying asset has become more valuable. A company whose profits haven't changed doesn't magically become 5 times more productive simply because its share price have increased. So there is a beautiful deviation. So the economy could experience a huge wealth effect on paper, but act also significant speculation. However, one use of this money could be extremely beneficial: starting businesses and investing in productive assets. So the big positive here is so now if you imagine that instead of spending all this 1 crore, millions of Indians invest part of it. Someone starts a manufacturing business, someone opens a hospital, someone builds a software company, someone invests in agriculture, someone starts a logistic company, someone builds houses, someone buys machinery. This is very different from simply spending money, because now money is being converted into productive capacity. So a factory produces goods, a farm produces food, and hospital produces healthcare, a software company provides services, a business creates job, and this is how an economy actually becomes richer. Remember the entire earlier problem: too much money chasing too few goods. Now imagine we use some of that money to create more goods, more houses, more food, more cars, more technology, more services. Now supply starts catching up with demand, and this is where the story changes. The same 1 crore that initially created inflation could potentially help create long-term economic growth if it is invested productively. So the biggest question isn't how much money did people receive, it's what did they do with that 1 crore. So what would happen to the RBI? So now we bring in another important player, is the Reserve Bank of India. So food prices are increasing and the inflation is increasing, which is resulting in the food prices to increase, resulting in house prices to increase. Wages are rising, demand is exploding. The RBI would want to prevent inflation from becoming uncontrollable. One of the main tools available to a central bank is increasing the interest rates. So when interest rates are increasing, so loans will become expensive. People may postpone buying houses, companies may postpone expansion, consumers may borrow less, spending can slow down, and that can reduce the demand. But there is a trade-off. If interest rates rise too much, economic growth will slow down. Businesses may invest less, people may spend less, so RBI have a very difficult job at that point of time. So control the inflation without damaging the economic growth. And this shows us something important about an economy. It's not enough to give people money. You also need monetary stability, because if the value of the money becomes unstable, people's savings and purchasing power becomes uncertain. So what happens to the government and the rupee? So now comes another major question: where did the 1 crore come from? If the government simply creates this money, we are back to our original problem: more rupees but not necessarily more goods. Then that can create enormous inflationary pressure. If the government borrows the money instead, government debt could become enormous. If it taxes people to fund it, then much of the money is simply being redistributed rather than magically created. Now there is another problem. People may start buying huge quantities of imported products like cars, electronics, foreign holidays, gold, machinery, oil. That means India needs more foreign currency. If imports rise much faster than exports, the rupee could face pressure. For example, if you see, if the dollar moves from 85 to 100, imported goods become more expensive in rupee terms, and that can create another source of inflation. So our simple 1 crore experiment is now affecting prices, interest rates, government finances, imports, and potentially the rupee. And but the biggest question remains, what happens to India's actual economic growth? So does India actually become richer? So this is where many people make a mistake. So I think they think if everyone has 1 crore, India's GDP will explode. Not necessarily. GDP measures the value of the goods and services produced in an economy. If everyone's bank account increases, but factories produce the same amount, farmers produce the same amount, and businesses provide the same services, then the country hasn't suddenly become richer. Prices may simply become higher. This is why economists distinguish between nominal growth and the real growth. If the price of everything doubles, so the rupee value of economy activity can increase. But if the quantity of the goods and services hasn't increased, the country's real standard of living hasn't doubled. So real economic growth requires more production, better technology, higher productivity, better infrastructure, more skilled workers, more investment. So the 1 crore can create a temporary consumption boom, but for India to become genuinely richer, we need to turn that money into productive capacity. And this leads to the final comparison, short term versus long term. So let's put everything together now. So in the short term, so what will happen? The demand could explode, right? Inflation could rise, house prices will rise, food will cost you more, labor shortages will be there, wages will be spiking, assets bubble will start, imports will rise, rupee could face pressure, interest rates could rise. So the first year could be extremely unstable, but now look at the potential long-term positives. In the long term, poverty could fall, household financial security could improve, entrepreneurship could increase, investment could rise, more businesses could be created, more factories could be built, technology adoption could accelerate, productivity could increase, more goods and services could be produced. So, and if production eventually catches up with the increased purchasing power, India could actually become more productive and prosperous. So the 1 crore itself isn't the answer. What happens after the 1 crore arrives is the answer. And now let's give our final verdict. So let's begin with the final verdict here. So what if every Indian suddenly received 1 crore? Would India become the richest country in the world? Probably not. At least not simply because everyone has more money. In the short term, we could see massive inflation coming up, and there can be higher house prices, higher food prices, labor shortages, asset bubbles, more imports pressures on the rupee, and potentially higher interest rates. But there is another side. If people use the money to start businesses, so let's say they invest in factories, improve the education, buy the productive assets, build the technology, invest in agriculture, create jobs, then India's productive capacity could increase, and that can create real economic growth. So here's the big lesson from this entire experiment. Imagine tomorrow if you receive 1 crore, you may feel rich, but ask yourself, how many houses are available, how many food is available, how many doctors are available, how much electricity is available, how productive are our factories? Because ultimately money is wealth. So ultimately money is wealth, and money is simply a way of claiming goods and services. Real wealth is the goods and services a country can actually produce. So you can create more rupees, but you cannot simply print more land, print more food, print more houses, more doctors, engineers, factories, technology. So those things have to be built. So perhaps the better question isn't what if every Indian gets 1 crore. The better question is, what if India becomes capable of creating rupees 1 crore worth of additional real wealth for every citizen? That would be a completely different story, because money can be printed, wealth has to be created, and that is how an economy truly grows. So what would you do with your rupees 1 crore tomorrow? You can please tell me in the comment section. So if 1 crore rupees suddenly appears in your bank account tomorrow, what would you do? So like this video if you enjoyed this simple explanation of economics, and subscribe for more videos explaining money, markets, and the economy in simple language. So thank you so much for watching. Take care. Happy investing. Bye bye.